My name is Marta. I'm the member of the program committee. And so I hoped that after the break, you rather go outside for a walk or join the other sessions. But now I think I have to make a presentation about how to build and offer new AI-based services because I didn't find a speaker. So you are so nice. Could somebody volunteer to do these presentations? Because the slides are okay, prepared, really, but I'm not so into AI. So somebody, it's not that difficult. It's about AI. You can say, thank you. You there. Oh, perfect, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Big applause, big applause. He's the bravest guy. Thank you.
Is this for me or is this for me?
How you want?
I don't know.
Do you want me to show the time? 10 minutes left?
Definitely do that. Okay. We're really improvising here. Woo! I'll decide what I want to do. Do I want to do this? I don't know. Oh, now it works. I'm going to do this. I think this is a lot more fun. Hello. How are we doing today? Can you hear me okay? Good. Oh, we're going to talk about that word that everybody's talking about. I don't know how we're going to do that. Let me start with this. Space, I don't know why. I always try to think of an anecdote to start anything off with. When I was 8 or 9 years old, in primary school, we had to write a little writing exercise about space. And apparently I've written the sentence, "You cannot be in a place where there's nothing because therefore you are there." And little, yeah. And my teacher wrote, "You should study philosophy," which I ended up doing. But why am I saying this? I'm going to spend quite some time of this presentation talking about what I'm not going to talk about. Okay, think about that for a while. So, hello, I already said hello, I'm Matthijs. Yeah, that's me. That's how you pronounce my name. It's always very difficult for any non-Dutch speaking people. And I know you're all linguists here. No, not really, no, okay. My background is in computer science and philosophy. What does that mean? I like to think about computers. All right, which puts me into the position of actually right now being a solution architect and product owner of Blackbird. So you can always meet me outside, wear the t-shirt. You can find me and talk about thinking about computers. See how that goes for you. But hopefully it gives me enough equipment to talk about this topic today for you, because I was really excited about that. So what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to do an introduction. We just did that. Then, as promised, I'm going to talk about what we're not going to talk about. Then I'm going to talk about what we are going to talk about. And then I've just written some cryptic messages that later down the line you'll see exactly what's going to happen. Yes, we're going to talk about Google Maps. Why are we going to talk about Google Maps? We'll see. Right, as promised. What are we not going to talk about? Nope. Nope, there's not going to be that kind of talk. Probably many like it, you'll see otherwise. I don't want to go too deep into this fact, or I want you to make your own judgment. You'll see why later. Not going to talk about this either. I know it's something that's a big question, a lot of other people tend to spend a lot of time talking about, but to answer this question, is generative AI, does it produce better quality than translations, human? I don't know. Maybe. Depends. You need to figure it out for yourself. That's not really up to me. You can basically, I think, discuss this for eternity, because the whole problem is that word quality, which I don't think makes much sense in this industry. How can you use AI chat interface or specific prompts? Not going to talk about prompts. Not going to talk about interfaces. You've all used it. You know how it works. You know how to send a message, and we can speak forever about prompts, but it's a tragedy that my science has become more of an empiric science than an actually exact one, because all we're now trying to do is finding out how prompts work. Doesn't really make much sense, but do try to experiment with it yourself. It's very valuable, but do it on your own time. I'm not going to talk about it here. And if you should or should not use AI as an assistant during translation, do it. I mean, that's what they're built for. So just do it. But I don't care about it today. Okay, hopefully that was short enough to set the mood. So now you're probably thinking, okay, but if we're not going to talk about any of that, then what are we going to talk about? Because I think that was 90% of my whole conversation up so far. And I had these 3 things listed, and then my girlfriend said yesterday, Matthijs, this doesn't make sense, this is not a good slide, it says nothing. And I'm like, you're totally right, but I cannot change it anymore. So yeah, you can do better than that, I know. We are going to talk about how do you make it actionable? Because that's something that I feel has been lacking a lot. So we're all talking about, yes, we can produce content, we can do translations, all very fun. It can help us in certain scenarios. How do you actually put it in production, and how do you make that a service that you can profit off? Because I think that's something, I don't know, we don't talk about enough, I guess. A lot of ifs and buts to that statement. This is not for everyone. If you don't have the scale, first of all, if you don't have the scale to do anything remotely with AI, then this does not apply to you. Do what you're doing really well right now, keep doing that, it works, and then just take this as, oh, that's interesting, that's what the bigger companies do, okay, take it or leave it. This does not apply to everyone, that's very important to say, because yes, it doesn't make sense to apply this to every small process, every new process that you're working on. It's really situational, but it's really driving growth in a lot of scaling applications when high volume of translations, or, I'll explain later, repurposing becomes very relevant. So, okay, as proper academic usage, this is needed. Because like I said, I don't like to use the word AI. I had to put it in the title because that was the program theme, and I wanted to talk to you today. But I don't like the definition, so I just want to talk about technology that can reason, because it's a very difficult word to use when it comes to AI, about and produce natural language. So the reason I wanted to put that here is because I want this talk to be applicable today. I want this talk to be applicable in 5 years and in 10 years. I don't want to talk about LLMs today, but seeing that technology evolves and seeing what technology could do and probably will do better or worse in the future, how can you still be prepared for that and use whatever comes out in 2 months that everybody's then putting their money into? How can you use that and still provide better services? So I want it to be a very applicable talk. Also, disclaimer that I thought about, I should say, I don't have NVIDIA stock, and I didn't have it last week either, which is also relevant. So I don't want to at all participate in the AI hype. I don't have a stake in that game. Don't worry about that. Okay, very quickly, I just introduced myself. Let me also introduce Rosetta. Rosetta has been interning with us at Blackbird. She is doing a master in translation and localization at MIS, so maybe some of her classmates are in the room, or maybe outside working. And she did an internship, or she is doing an internship with us. And we basically asked her, because she was really interested in LLM, so yes, that is the LLM part. And we asked her, okay, it's cool and all, how does it work in production? That was basically what we set her off with, and she made her own conclusion observations, because if you know anything about the company I work for, we care about automation, we care about using things in production. What if you hit your CMS content that's full of tags, and you throw it into an LLM? Does it work? That was kind of the thing we started with, and she made some interesting conclusions. So besides the whole meta talk I'm going to give today, I say today, we're already probably 10 minutes in already, Rosetta will sometimes pop up and give you a tip that is applicable now, and that you can actually use actionably. So hopefully we'll provide a little bit of both for you. Okay, now let's get started. I want to talk first about the core translation process, and that's something that I hope you all should be very familiar with. And the reason I start with this is it's basically the process that we're all doing, whether you're an enterprise, whether you're an LSP, whatever you do. It's the same process everyone does, and it's the same process that everybody is trying to introduce AI into. We're going to start it from there, see how AI is applied there. And again, when I say AI, I mean language technology in general. And later we're going to see how that process can morph. And that's going to be muy excited. Yeah, I sketched this. This is basically how I think everyone should see their process a little bit. So you have a client, and you've got a service provider. Client, service provider, need to mirror that. And then you as a service provider, once you receive some content, you decide, however you have shaped your business, to do certain steps, to change that content into a translation. You do some proofreading, or apparently we've renamed that to post-editing after NMT, but yep. Some QA, potentially, maybe some other steps. Maybe you print it out, and you throw some mud at it, I don't know. And then you deliver that content back to your client, and you use language resources for that. Or you could. Like, what do I mean with language resources? Glossaries, term bases, style guides, strategies, anything auxiliary that you use in order to create that translation. So your source content plus your language resources equals your translation. And that blue triangle is going to be very important. Okay. First step. I'm adding the little robot-y emoji to signify. I think that's where people have started to add AI, and we did that already, I think, 20 years ago. It didn't work that well. We've started to make that part really better. And I'm just going to provide some examples of, okay, this is pretty abstract. How does that look like in practice? Well, would look something like this. You've got some CMS that creates some content. You get the content, you send it to any NMT, and then you put it back. That's all it is. If you're just using NMT and you make that your whole service, then it isn't more than a couple of steps. And that's about how it looks like. Of course, this doesn't put the words in your project management software and charge your client, but do you still want to do that if you're doing this anyway? That's my soapbox tomorrow. I won't get into that now. I don't have that much time. Okay, next step where people add AI, proofreading, post-editing. You can make that automated as well. We've seen that definitely in the last year happen more and more. So then that would look something like that. So a different CMS came in, and we are using language resources for the first time. We see a glossary that's exported. We're using NMT, and then we're actually using OpenAI to post-edit. Apparently that's the service, and we put the translation back. Little disclaimer, if this is too technical for you, that's okay. This is an advanced talk, something for everybody. Don't walk out. It's just an example of what's going on here. But the language resource, in this case the glossary, is reused in both steps. That is very much possible today. But then, the interesting thing is that a lot of people that I work with, a lot of LSPs, they seem to think their bottleneck is in QA. And that's where they want to apply LLMs as well, which is possible if you, well, not even LLMs, also other technologies that exist, for example, MTQA technology. You used in this case to just get a quality score of your software, of your translation. And based on the quality, you're going to decide, okay, am I going to do a manual translation now, or am I going to immediately push the content back? And we see here, it's getting more and more complicated. Don't worry about it. It's just an example. But a really big gap that we see in our industry is that we tend to like to work with files, but a lot of AI likes to work with strings, with text, with segments. And that's a really big gap that you need to overcome in order to apply and offer AI-based services correctly. But luckily, our industry had hindsight, and I don't know how old it is, like 20 years ago, an open source framework was already devised in order to turn any file format, or almost any file format, into an XLIF, a standard we all know and love, and therefore something that an AI could actually work on. So there's a certain bridge that you need to gap when it comes to working on files and working on using technology that works on segments. And you need to think about that. Hopefully this is all very interesting to you so far. And third place, you thought we were done here. No. There's another place that AI tends to be used today, and that's with the ingestion part of your content. Because it's possible that you're getting a lot of content from your client, and you just don't know what it is, and you need to make a distinction. What am I going to do with it? Does everything need a human translation? Does nothing need a human translation? Today, maybe too much is human translated. You don't know. So what you can do is ask basically AI, okay, we're getting some files, in this case from Google Drive. We don't know what it is, but AI can tell you basically, if you train it or however you want to apply it, classify it for me. Is this low value? Is it high value? Which way does it need to go? Do I need to put it into a TMS and have a human look at it, or can I just use a machine translation and immediately deliver it? Another way you can apply it today. But none of that is the actual interesting stuff that I wanted to talk about. Because, well, like I said, there's interesting problems that arise when trying to apply AI in actual processes, in actual production. We see that the increased value of language resources, so those glossaries, those style guides, become very important. I talked to you about the gap between files and segments, and we see that pre-processing and classification is very useful. Now, Rosetta has some things to say about that. We've basically concluded that if you have simple HTML documents which still contain a lot of tags, LLMs will do fine. You can just throw it there, and they put it back just fine. That's what they're built for to do. They predict that. If you tell it, be wary of tags, be wary of HTML tags, etc. It's trained on billions of HTML files, and it understands that really well. It's capable of doing that. So, first checkbox, you don't have to worry about that in the first place. Of course, it can still go wrong. It's LLMs after all. Second part, second tip, you can do LQA tasks with LLMs. So it will, if you, for example, ask it, hey, here's a translation, here was the source text, what are the issues? It will be able to give you issues that are in the translation that maybe a translator missed or an NMT missed. But its attitude is different, and that's a very interesting observation. So if you were going to do, for example, a segment, an analysis on the attitude, and thing to get a score in order to make a decision, it's actually sometimes it's very happy about the tone of voice that it has. So it's a really good translation, but this and this and this. Or it's a very bad translation, but this and this and this. And that's not very consistent, and that was very interesting to find. So you have to read it yourself, and you can take the issues, but the actual sentiment is always different. Last quick tip from Rosetta. She's studying to be an interpreter, and she found that the very expensive transcript tools don't do punctuation at all. But she said, well, if I just build an automation that throws it through an LLM, it actually fixes all the punctuation for me. Typical use case for LLMs. Just wanted to put it out there. I didn't know where else in the presentation to put it. Okay, so this was our typical workflow. And now the question is, if we're moving to a future where generation of content becomes way more important than actual translation, how does this change? Because still some content will be created, but maybe those language resources become a lot more valuable, and they may be a lot more a source of change. Maybe in the future, someone's going to pull the levers of those language resources, and those should be the changes that create new content. How does that look like? Well, morphs a little bit into something like this. Again, way too abstract. So we have our base content, we have our language resources, and those should be the triggers of, well, I call it repurposing already here, of repurposing tasks. So those together trigger the fact that you're translating something or in any other way repurposing. I'll get to that. And you can deploy it into different channels. Abstract, how does it look like in a little bit more concrete example? For example, if we have a technology that allows you to see if there are changes, for example, you're managing your content in TurbBase, you can use that as a trigger to say, okay, my terms have changed. Maybe your marketing chief marketing officer said, okay, we're going to change all the words. And you're like, great, but how do I make sure that all the content is still consistent? Your language resource tool actually triggers your whole workflow of all the, for example, in this case, products in Shopify being updated. In this case, simple NMT, but still, there's different types of workflows that you're starting to create because those language resources become a lot more interesting. This already solves the problem today, of course, in this case with NMT, but with AI it becomes a lot more interesting. Again, same workflow, different types of software. In this case we have CMS, Sitecore, and we're actually using OpenAI to generate new content based on new terms, new strategies that have been created or given by the client that are important. Right, Rosetta, what's up? Rosetta says, the style guides that we use today are very non-standardized. They're usually just Word documents like, hey, pay attention to this. They don't work today with LLMs. What does that mean? If your style guide says, oh, by the way, this is the date format, this is the currency format, then an LLM will say, okay, I need to put dates and currencies in there, even that was not part of your source content. So that doesn't work. So you need to curate style guides a lot more. Again, the focus on the importance of linguistic resources. Those need to be optimized for, in this case, LLMs, in the future, any technology that you may want to use it with. Now, this is a little bit of a given, but yeah, don't let it touch your source material. So you can use it to analyze, to classify what type of automation you would need to use, what type of service you're going to offer. But you should never let it change it and therefore lose your source material. I hope that's very logical to you, but we needed to put it out there because clearly we tried. It doesn't produce good results if you do try to pre-process your source content without keeping the actual source material in there. Ooh, I promised I would talk about Google Maps. We're going a little fast, I know. Don't have that much time, I have so much to say. Why am I going to talk about Google Maps? It was released in 2005, and I think that if it was going to be released today, and we didn't have this type of software before, by the way, I'm putting my solution architect hat off and putting my product manager hat on. If it was released today, we would have just as much, let's say, financial hype around it as AI has now, because it is a really powerful software that enables a lot of things that we do today. And a lot of new services that have been built with it. For example, what service, app, if you want to call it, was created in 2009 is now more than 3 times the revenue, but was not possible without Google Maps. Does anyone have any idea? Exactly, that was fast. Uber. Without Google Maps, no Uber. So we had this technology that in itself was pretty interesting, pretty valuable, but that someone took and built a way more valuable service out of it. Does that remind you of anything? I think today we are in the 2005 stage of where Google Maps was. We have something that we all recognize, oh, this is pretty good, this solves some problems for us. But only if you create an actual service out of it that solves an even bigger, more demanding problem, then it can be way more valuable. And I think we're not there yet with AI today. I think that service or those services still have to be built, so that's up to you. Okay. Yeah, we're heading to that last section where I'm going to make things really complicated. Before making things really complicated, let's make it very simple. This is what a translation is. We go from one language, yep, that's where the arrow is, from one language to the other, which you could see as a very one-dimensional step, right? The source content should be exactly the same. That's apparently how we rate quality if the source and target are the same. But I think that's going to change. I think we're going to see a lot more multi-dimensional operations going on, because we see that that's now possible. How does that look like? Well, here's the multi-dimensionality in it. I just added a dimension to it. Let's say, it's all about target audiences. Let's say your target audience was geriatric French people. I don't know. It's not really geriatric, but let's say that's the target audience. And your new target audience is children under the age of 12 that speak Spanish. I don't know what content that is, but could be. That is now certainly possible. Maybe it's not good enough today. Like I said, I'm not talking about if the quality is good. No. I'm talking about this what language technology allows you to do. And therefore, this is where you can bring your service towards. So you can start offering services where you're saying, well, we have a name for this in our industry already. We all decided to call it transcreating. But yeah, we're allowing what we call a manipulation of the translation, or not even translation, repurposing of content for a different audience entirely, more than only the axis of the language. So let's say that you have a client that has a lot of content on one platform and says, all those articles on Medium, they need to go to LinkedIn. But the target audience on LinkedIn speaks a different language, even though they all speak English, they speak a different language than the target audience on Medium. So you need to create a service, or you will be able to offer a service, that allows you to take the content in one place, repurpose it for another channel. And so, first tip from Rosetta, LLMs could be very helpful with terminology management and extraction. It's true, you can ask today, hey, generate a glossary for me, and it will do it. If it does it right, that's up to you. You can tweak it. Don't ask me to do that. You can experiment with that. But the problem that we start to see is if we are going to offer those services a lot, then the actual creation of language resources becomes the bottleneck. Yeah, take a picture of that. You think you need a lot more than a picture for it to be explained. So I try to explain it as best as possible. So instead of having just base content and language resources, if you are pushing to a lot of channels, with every channel being, again, another different type of user, different type of language, then suddenly you need a lot of different style guides, terminologies, etc., in order to do that. And that becomes the bottleneck. How do you create them? So what you could do is say, client, all you do is you define the goals. This is what I want to achieve with my language. And then you say, okay, we're going to analyze automatically all those channels that you want to push to. We're going to extract basically what the style guides are, etc. And then we're going to use that to generate these language resources, and they will be used to repurpose and create new content on those channels. And that's somewhere possible today already. So you could even, like, if you point something to a website, you can just scrape the whole website and say, okay, let's extract the glossary from here, define the way these people talk, define everything about it, codify those language resources, and then later use them in any type of repurposing process. Translation is repurposing after all. If I was at a carnival and I had a big glass sphere and I would have to look into it, I would say that we're heading towards a future where all content is hyper-personalized, because to have the most impact on me, you would need to know my educational background, socioeconomic status, the language I prefer to speak, prefer to see some content in, my appetite for humor, and that together creates perfect content for me. But if we're not in that type of future yet, then this is a very interesting service that we're heading towards, where those language resources itself become something that you can extract and can reuse to make build the optimal language for whatever purpose it needs to be and have for whatever channel. So, I know I'm already almost at time, and I want to have a lot of questions. If you don't have a lot of questions, I'll be very disappointed. You can keep in touch with me. You can visit me outside with a booth. I have a soapbox tomorrow you can go to as well, where I will be dropping some spice, I hope. And I'm on a panel tomorrow apparently, so go visit that as well. But for now, I really want to have a lot of questions about this, because I know this is heart. And you want this. I'm going to use this. Okay. Yes. Okay, good.
Hi, I'm Nikki from Avant Page Translations. I have nothing to do with operations, so this might be a totally dumb question. But I had an AI expert tell me one time that how efficiently you can use AI in terms of like QA steps really depends on your production software. So, and he said that there's only one that he would recommend. So in terms of all the things that you said could happen, because maybe we're in the translation MT post-editing phase, how important is your production or your source?
In terms of speed or money?